Hey guys, what is going on? In this video, we'll learn about service accounts in Google Cloud. This will mainly be from the viewpoint of a virtual machine. We'll do so by building various scenarios and then implementing them in Google Cloud. At a high level, there are two scenarios that we will go over. In the first one, we'll mount a GCS bucket on a virtual machine. We'll attempt various options like reading and writing to that bucket. We'll perform these tasks as user root and also as a regular user. During the course of these exercises, we will encounter a lot of challenges and we'll take the necessary steps to resolve them. And honestly, this is the real learning, trying to figure out how to fix those issues. We'll also discuss the options tied to mounting the bucket. And of course, I'll tell you the ones that I recommend. In the second scenario, we'll access BQ or BigQuery from a virtual machine. This will give you a good idea on how service accounts work. Let's get started. Okay, I'm in my console. I've created a new project. Let's try and create a virtual machine. For that, I need to enable the Compute Engine API. I'll do that. This might take some time. Let's see. Okay, it finally came back up. I'll try to create an instance. I'll call it VM1. It's in Iowa. I'll leave it at the defaults. It's E2 medium. Again, I'll leave it all at the defaults. I'll create it. Wait for it to come up. And once it comes up, we are going to log into the VM and run a few commands. This is the website which contains all the commands. I won't run it one at a time. You can just go over the steps here. Okay, it appears to be up. Let's SSH into it. Authorize. Okay, I have logged in. I'll run all those commands. It will install a few packages and we will finally be able to execute GCS Fuse, which allows you to mount the actual GCS or Google Cloud Storage buckets. Okay, we are good. Clear the screen. GCS Fuse -V, and that is installed. Okay. The next thing I'll do is I'll go back to the console and I'll create a storage bucket. Let's select cloud storage buckets and let's create a new one. Okay, I had to try a few different names before I could find one that is not being used. I'll just select a region, and since we went with Central 1, I'll continue with the same. Okay, I'll head on down and I'll just hit create. Okay, looks like the bucket has been created. I'll navigate back over to my Linux system. I'm at the command line. Let's run gsutil ls. This should display all the storage accounts. And we do see the bucket that we recently created. Okay, so the goal is to mount this bucket onto our operating system. Okay, apparently I need to sudo over to root. I've done that. Okay, let's list the bucket again. gsutil ls Let's also create that mount point bkt mnt. This is where we'll mount the storage bucket, and the command for that we are going to use is GCS Fuse, the name of the bucket, and the mount point. Okay, that appears to have worked. Let's see if we can list it. We can, and obviously there is nothing in it. Now I'll attempt the same thing, but I'll put it in the HCFS tab. So I'll clear the screen, BI HCFS tab. To save you some time, I'll just copy it over. Okay, so all I'm doing is I'm running the exact same commands and I'm mounting them on my system. I think I got the name wrong, so let me fix that. All right, and I need to run another command, systemctl daemon reload. I'll unmount /mnt bucket mount, and I'll mount it again, and it has gotten mounted. Okay, what I'll also do is I'll try to create a test file. And I'll try to copy it, and that doesn't work because we need to make a few changes to get it to work. Okay, let's figure out what those changes are. The first change we need to make is pretty simple. We'll go in here and we'll make it RW, so that will make it read write. And again, I'll do a systemctl daemon reload. I'll unmount and I'll mount it back. All right, now I'll try to copy it again, and that still fails. So let's go back to the console and look at the changes we need to make. Okay, the first change we need to make is we need to grant the service account that is tied to the virtual machine the necessary access. So let's try and do that. And before we do that, I need to obtain the name of the service account. So I'll go in here to virtual machines, and I'll go down here somewhere. There you go. That's the name of the service account. Now I'll go into IAM. I will search for the name, and the current role is editor. So what I'll do is I'll add another role, and this role is going to be storage creator, I believe. Let's see. Storage object creator is the name of the role. I'm going to save it. Let's head back to the virtual machine. Let's try the same command again. It still failed. Now we need to make another change, and to make that change we need to shut down the VM. Before we shut down the VM, there is another change we need to make at the operating system level. If you do not make this change, your system will not come up. We need to add an option to the mount point, and that option is netdev, or rather _netdev. And this option is very important because if you do not add this option, your system will not come up. Why is this option needed? So what happens is during the boot process, all of the subsystems start up in a certain sequence. The file system is one of the first ones to start because the file system contains the operating system, and you cannot load the operating system without accessing the file. Now for us to be able to mount the GCS storage bucket, the network subsystem needs to be up, but the network subsystem starts up much later. So what the _netdev option does is It allows the mount process to wait until the network subsystem comes up and starts mounting it. Okay, this is a very important option, and I cannot tell you how many times admins have broken the entire system just because they did not add this option. Now with that done, let's also run a few other commands. Systemctl daemon reload. And let's clear the screen. Let's unmount and mount it one more time. Okay, that works. We are good with that. I'll head back to the console and make the necessary changes. Okay, let's go back to the VM. Let's shut it down. Let's wait for it to shut down, and then I'll show you what the change is. Okay, so the VM has finally shut down. Let's go into the VM. And down here, let's click edit first. And down here, you see the access scopes. So currently it's set for default access scope. So let's set the access for each API. You can also do allow full access. That is fine too. But we just want to narrow it down to the one we need. So I'll come here and in storage, I'll say read write and I'll save it. Okay, the save completed. Let's go and start up the VM. I'm going to start it up. Okay, looks like the VM is up. Let's SSH into it. Okay, I'm on the VM. I'll sudo over to root. And we'll try the same cp command again. But before we do, let's make sure the mount point is in place. It is. Copy test file mnt bkt mount. Okay, there you go. It has been mounted. Let's try a few other things. Bkt mount. We'll edit it and make a change right here. Let's see if this works. That works too. Let's cat it out. Let's also delete it. Okay, and let's copy it over again. So all of these operations worked. We are good here. But this is most likely not a good use case. What happens in most companies is you are part of a group. You're a regular user. You're part of a group, and the group has been granted access to the storage bucket, not the actual root account, right? So let's try and do that. First, we'll create a new user. We'll do user add. So all these options, the -m option will create a home directory, and the -s is to specify the name of the shell. And when you create a user account, it will also create a group for you. So let's see. So you have a user and the group also has been created. The name of the group is user1 and the group ID is 1002, right? So by default, if you sudo over to user1, I'll create another file here. I'll just say user1.file. This file has been created by user1. And let's see if we can even see the mount point, right? So if you look at /mnt, you see all of these strange characters here, which seems to indicate that this user cannot access the mount point. So let's fix that. I will exit. I will clear the screen. I'll go into HCFS tab. And what I'll do is I'll add an option here called allow other. Okay. Let's see what happens now. I'll do systemctl daemon reload and mount and mount. Clear the screen one more time. SU over to user1, and let's see if that command is still there. Hold on. Okay, it overrode the file. Let's create it one more time. This is a test file. It has been created by user1. Okay. Now let's see if we can see the mount point. Okay, it's looking better than earlier. So that option allows other users to view the mount point as well, right? But can we write this file into that mount point? Let's try that out. Okay, permission denied. It's throwing an error. So let's see how to fix this. Go back to root. First thing we'll do is we'll create a folder. So let's call it bucket mount folder 1. Let's look at the permission of this bucket. And it says root. Okay, so the user is root and the group is root. But we know the group ID for the user is something different. What was that? Let's take a look. It was GID was 1002. So this is the group ID that we need to grant access to that folder. So let's see how to do that. I'll open up FS tab again. I'll go in here and I'll add a few options. The UID, we can leave it at root. If you want to grant a user account, you can change it here, but I'll leave it at root. The group ID we know is 1002, and the directory mode we need to set it to 775, right? Now with this in place, let's do another reload. ctl daemon reload. We'll unmount the bucket. We'll mount it back. We'll clear the screen. SU over to user1, and let's look at the bucket mount. So we see two things. The first one is the user group is showing up, which is user1, and the folder permissions are showing up as read write, which means we can write to this folder. So let's try that same command again. cp user1.file folder 1, and that worked. So let's list the file. It's owned by root and user1. Let's also edit it. It has been updated directly on the storage bucket by user1. Let's see if this works. And it does. Let's cat it out. That works too. As a final test, let's remove it. And that works too. So all the commands worked. Okay. Now let's take a moment to go over the options that we added. So these were the options that we added in the FS tab. So the first one is the name of the bucket. The second is the name of the mount point. GCS Fuse simply signifies that it's a GCS Fuse kind of mount. The next option is read write, which allows us to write to the bucket. Underscore net dev, we went into great detail explaining the importance of it. Allow other allows other users to view that mount point. UID root, meaning the user ID of the files will be root. GID is the group ID will be 1002, which we know as user 1, and the dir mode is the default permission on the folder. Okay, so this is the basic setup. These are the options that I use, so I would recommend these options as well to you. And having said this, let's move on to a few other items we want to discuss. I'll quit out of it. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll create another storage bucket in a different region, right? So the first bucket we created was in central 1. Let's create this bucket somewhere else. YT bucket 202402. Where do you want to store it? Let's select some random region. Let's say Columbus. I'm thinking it's Columbus, Ohio. I'll select the defaults here and confirm. So we are creating another storage bucket in a different region, but it's in the same project, right? So it looks like the bucket has been created. Let's confirm it on the screen. So we have one in US Central 1, the one we've been working with, and we just created another one in US East 5. Now the question for you is, once I go into the virtual machine, will I be able to view the second bucket? Let's go ahead and take a look. Yeah, I'm going to exit from here. I'm going to clear the screen and we are going to run the gsutil command. And we can see it. So let's try and mount the other one, GCS Fuse. But before we mount it, we need to create the folder. So we'll call it MNT bucket mount. We'll call it 02. And then GCS Fuse bucket 2024-02/MNT bucket mount 02. Okay, typo on my side. Okay, I think I made a mistake. Yes, I did. I selected the wrong name. So this is the mistake that I made. I should have called it -02. Okay, I think I got it right this time. Okay, that's been mounted. Let's take a look at it. Let's copy a test file just for fun. Okay, all of that works. Now let's take it a step further. Let's create another bucket, but in a separate project. And let's try and mount it. What do you think will happen? Let's find out. Okay, I'm in a new project. And in here, I'm going to create yet another storage bucket. I'll just call it PRJ2. And I'll just leave it in the default region. I don't care where it is. And I'll go ahead and create. Okay. Okay, now this bucket has been created. Let's go back to our terminal and see if we can mount it. I'll clear the screen. I'll run the gsutil command again. And no, I don't see it. Why do you think that is? The reason it worked earlier is because the storage account, which is tied to this virtual machine, had the necessary access. But in the new project, the storage account does not have the necessary access. In fact, the new project does not even know about our storage account. So let's do this. Let's grant this service account the necessary access to the bucket in the new project. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. But first, let's get the name of the service account. I'll go to the virtual machines. In the virtual machine, I'll try to find my SA. I will grant access, and the access I want to grant is storage object creator. Okay, I'm going to save it here, and the access has been granted. Let's go back to our terminal. Let's try and mount it, but before we mount it, let's create another folder. Okay, we tried to mount it, but it failed, and the failure says the user does not have the storage objects list access. Okay, so let's go back and try and grant one additional role. Go back to IAM, and I'll grant it storage object viewer role. So what is the difference between the storage object viewer and creator? So it clearly says here that the storage object creator does not give permission to view the object. So I think what you're thinking at this point is, why did it work for the other storage account? And the reason it worked is because the other service account already had an editor role, which granted it the necessary list permission. I'll clear the screen and I'll mount it again. It appears to have worked. Let's copy our test file over to, let's copy our test file to the new mount, and that worked. Let's list it. Let's delete it. Okay, all of those operations work. Okay, let's try something similar, but this time with another very popular service in Google Cloud, and that service is BigQuery or BQ. So what I'll do is I'll navigate over to BQ and I'll create a new data set. All right, I don't think there are any data sets here. Let's create a new data set. BQ demo, I'll just call it BQ demo. Okay, it's complaining about that. Underscores are allowed, so let's call it BQ underscore demo. And I'll just create this data set. Okay, it needs a region. Let's go with central. I'm fine with that. Create the data set. And in the data set, I'll create a table. And the name of this table I'm going to say is demo table. Okay. Okay, it has been created. We've created both of them, the data set and the table. So let's go back to the command line and see if we can access it. Okay, I'm at the command line. Let's run the command to list the data set. And it says insufficient permission. By now, I think we know what change needs to be made. So let's go back to the virtual machine and make that change. Let's head back over to virtual machines. Let's shut down the virtual machine. Let's wait for it to shut down. Okay, it finally appears to have stopped. So let's go into the virtual machine. Let's go into edit. And let's find that setting again. Okay, there you go. There it is. So over here, just like we did for the storage account, we need to do the same thing for BigQuery. And I'll just enable it. Let's save it. And let's start up the virtual machine. Okay, the VM has started up. Let's SSH into it. Authorize, yes. Sudo to root. Let's do pqls. Okay, that works now. pqls format pretty JSON and the name of our dataset. Okay, so it's showing me a lot of details. It's showing me the name of the data set. It's showing me the name of the project and also the table. That pretty much concludes this video. Thank you so much for watching. Before I conclude this video, I'll go ahead and delete all the resources that I created just so we can save on costs. I would suggest you do the same. Thank you.